Hi, welcome back to Job Opportunity, and today we have Mr. Stanton Sharp, who is a photojournalist and has been featured in the New York Times, Time, Rolling Stone, Vanity Fair, CNN, The Wall Street Journal, Forbes, and many more. Mr. Sharp, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you doing? Thanks for having me on.
Yep. Today we are asking him a few questions about his job. To start it off, can you briefly explain your profession as a photojournalist?
Yeah, so I'm a photojournalist and documentary photographer. Essentially what I do, I focus more on underrepresented communities and conflict around the world. So I find what's going on. I've covered wars, I covered protests, refugee camps. Those are mostly the areas that I cover. And yeah, it's usually just going where the story needs to be told, something dire that's happening that people need to know about. I usually go and cover that, and I'll photograph it, I video, and I write about it too. So photojournalist, but I do kind of all of it now because that's where we are these days with technology.
Yeah, and you said that you're trying to capture the stories of the underrepresented. And what do you really look for when taking those photos and videos?
Well, I look at that mostly when I'm thinking about what story to find. So whether that's finding a story that's already heavily covered in the news, but I feel in an inaccurate way or in an unpersonal way, or if I feel like different groups are being used as rhetorical devices for a media company's agenda, I tend to be attracted to trying to cover that in a more humane way. So kind of finding the personal stories within political and social situations and finding more human stories. And in taking the photos, trying to find more personal photos, I don't think I'm really looking for anything in particular when I take the photo, but I think it's just spending as much time with people and developing relationships with people who you're photographing and developing like true connection and bonds and trust and even friendship, so that's my goal. That's what I'm trying to do.
And you said you're making a connection with them, so you're on the field in those, I guess, protests sometimes. Do you have any crazy stories of about sometimes where things get really hectic?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think sometimes, I was arrested a couple times just for covering things. I was fine though. In the end of the day, I think I got arrested in Hong Kong, and actually in LA I was arrested. But besides that, I've been in some kind of dangerous situations in the Middle East. I think a lot of it is just preparing and making sure you know where you are and what you're doing. There's always some dangers, especially when the danger lies in not preparing and not really knowing your setting or your surrounding. But when you know your surrounding and you know what's going on, you can make smart decisions. Yeah.
That's really cool. What is one thing that you really just love about your job?
The reason I wanted to do this is not the reason I do it now, I think the reason I wanted to do it was a very romantic idea of exploring the world and understanding different cultures, meeting new people, and having full autonomy in my life. That seemed like the romantic idea of how to do it. I worked in entertainment before this. I worked on the business side, and then I worked on film sets and and as a cameraman, and I wanted something more exciting, so I did this. But now I think what I like about the job is just getting a wider scope of humanity. Personally, that's what I find gratifying, and also just being able to be helpful how I can with the stories I'm telling, because sometimes it's easy to get cynical and think that there's no point in this anyways. But when you talk to someone who said this really, when people reach out to you and say it really, thank you for covering this, thank you for sharing our story, that feels good. Yeah.
And you said that it's different than a normal job where you're just at a computer all day, just typing things down. Do you think that this job really requires a certain type of person, a certain type of personality or attitude towards people?
I think in terms of wanting to do this job when it gets hard, because in the beginning it's really fun. In the middle it gets a lot harder, and when you start to like have a more like longevity to your job, there's a lot of sacrifices once you get older that you don't really consider when you're like 25. Like, it's really hard to have relationships with friends and romantic relationships. It's really hard to have a family. It's really hard to do these things because you're always gone. And if you're not gone, you're not doing your job. You're not making money. You're not fulfilling your need to or desire to do a job. So I think loving this job is what you need. You don't have to have a certain personality type, but you gotta, I think naturally, if you don't have the desire to do this, you're just not going to do it very long, because there's not a ton of money in it compared to so many other easier ways to make money. And like I said, it requires a lot of sacrifice and for lower pay. So if you love doing it, any personality works.
And what would be that one piece of advice that you would tell those photojournalists out there in the middle of their career, like feeling that anxiety, that stress of not being there for their family or not working enough? What would you say to them?
Probably what I tell myself, which is like, do you want to do it? Do you still want to do this? Because there's always an option. I mean, one thing that, with risk comes reward. So I've noticed that from doing a more comfortable job in Los Angeles, where there was less risk versus, and I don't mean like physical risk, I mean like personal risk, like you're risking monetary risk, like you just less risk living in LA doing a consistent job where you get a consistent 2-week paycheck, versus doing this where there's a lot more inherent risk. You do get a lot more rewards, a lot more doors open up, a lot more opportunities. You meet a lot more people, and you have the opportunity to take like maybe a better stable job too. So like I've been tempted by that as well. And I think I just tell myself like, or just ask myself, I'm like, do you still want to do this? And every single time I'm like, I'd say to myself, I'm like, well, I can't imagine me doing anything else but this right now. So if, I guess, just ask yourself that question. Like, I think people's gut and your heart and your mind will tell you things if you listen to it. So to people who are questioning whether they want to do something, ask yourself if you need to stick with it a little longer, if you're ready to go. And I think you'll know if you really spend time with yourself and think about it.
Wow, that's great advice. I think that's really true for any type of job. And
yeah, totally.
So last question here. If COVID didn't happen, where would you be traveling right now? Where would you want to travel right now?
Yeah. So COVID, right before COVID, I was covering the Hong Kong protests for like 5 months. And then right after that, I was in Syria for like a month and a half or 2 months, and a little bit in Iraq. And then the minute I got home, that was when, you remember when Tom Hanks got COVID and it was all over the TV? Yeah, I was visiting family friends in Chicago, and that's when we saw it, and I was like, oh, we're probably gonna be stuck here for a while. But if that didn't happen, we were gonna move back to Vietnam, and then I was just wanting to cover as many things depending on what was going on in the world. So.
All right. Thank you for your time today, Mr. Sharp. Any last words for those high schoolers out there who need an idea on what to pursue in life?
Yeah, I would just say don't put any boundaries on what you think you should do. Take should out of your vocabulary, and look at all the opportunities, and trust yourself that when you see something that you like, don't tell yourself that you can or can't do it. Just pursue it, and be responsible, and make it work. If you can make it work, if you really want to,